I don't know how active I'll be here after this my YouTube video for work. I just want to say hi to everyone.
Hey, hi. We're so glad you're here. This is awesome. Yeah, just put us on mute if you need to, but I'll record it too if you want to listen to it afterwards.
No, do it backwards. Turn on the closed captioning for the video and leave the audio on here.
If I knew how to do that, I would. Maybe I'll spend some more time on YouTube today trying to figure out how Zoom works. All right. Can you see my screen? Cool. I'm going to move this down here. Cool. Yay. Here we go. Self-talk in sports. Let's see. I got to pull one more thing up to help me out through this. I have broken down all of these exercises that we're doing. So self-talk in sport, first of all, like what is it? So it's the internal dialogue that we have that goes through our minds, the thoughts that pop up when things get hard, either in a tough workout, the start of a race, during a race, or even just when we start thinking about our goals and you have those little like, sometimes they sound like gremlins, other times they sound like cheerleaders, but basically it's, you know, the voice in your head that can either be your biggest cheerleader or your harshest critic. So there's three kinds of self-talk: positive, instructional, and negative. So positive self-talk is kind of like what we talk about a lot on these calls and in training logs and in building mantras. So this is also known as like motivational or encouraging self-talk, but basically the point is to like inspire and empower you. So this is kind of what we're aiming for most of the time. Instructional self-talk. This is essentially when like you become your own inner coach and you're telling yourself like, I need to focus, I need to concentrate, I need to eat every 30 minutes. So you're paying attention to like the specific technical elements of an action. Good examples of when this is helpful is if you're on really technical or steep uphill, downhill terrain. You know, it's like small steps, keep your eyes up. You know, I think like Jacob, if you don't mind me using you as an example, it was like a lot of last week in Leadville, it was like the race doesn't end at Twin Lakes, like the race ends in Leadville. Like you kind of have to like keep yourself going. So instructional self-talk is really helpful for that. And then, of course, there is negative self-talk, which is the opposite of what we want. This can sound like self-deprecating thoughts, mean tones, like when we say that we can be our own worst enemies, like this is what we're talking about. So this actually is incredibly dysfunctional and it increases anxiety, builds doubt, and decreases our self-belief. So this has the potential to just completely derail any event or workout or training block. So we're going to go through a couple exercises to try to mitigate this as much as possible. So self-talk happens in two different ways. The first way is automatic self-talk, which is also spontaneous. So it's like you can't always help when it happens. It's just that constant internal dialogue. So when those thoughts pop up in your head without really trying, you know, your brain just kind of giving you a running commentary. One example of this that I think of that is more visual for me is like when you're watching ESPN and they have the ticker going across the bottom of the screen and it's giving updates for all the other sporting events that are happening at the time. That's kind of what I think of as like automatic or spontaneous. Sorry. And then intentional self-talk is when you consciously decide to talk to yourself in a way that helps you stay focused. So that's kind of what we want. We want to take the automatic or spontaneous self-talk and like reframe it into something that we can use to improve performance, improve mindset. An example of this is like when you're feeling anxious before a race, you might tell yourself to relax, to breathe, to focus on the things that you can control, right? So this type of self-talk can help you stay calm and actually perform better. So the key is kind of recognizing when your self-talk is helping or hurting you, and then learning to use intentional self-talk to steer your thoughts in a positive direction, so that your inner voice can be your biggest supporter, especially when there's a lot of pressure, or it's like a high stakes situation. So our first exercise here is a race day simulation. This is going to help you sort of like recognize or understand spontaneous versus automatic self-talk. So what you guys need is a piece of paper and a pen, and then just to think about a couple of different race day scenarios, which I'll give you here in a second. So basically, we're going to set the scene, and I'm going to give each of you a different scenario that you can either share, or, you know, like Chris gets scenario 1, Andrew gets scenario 2. So your job here is to pay attention to the first thought that pops into your head. I'll give you like 10 seconds to go through these. So Ren, you're the first on my screen. So let's see, your scenario, you've just woken up on race day and you realize you've only got 4 hours of sleep. So take 10 seconds and just think about or write down what is going through your mind in that scenario.
Are you just calling me out because you know I've spent every pre-race night getting 3 hours of sleep? 4 would be great.
Yes. The short answer, yes. So, all right, Ren's got 4 hours of sleep. Jacob, you're next on my screen. So you're at the starting line and you notice your biggest competitor and or rival and or someone, you're like, I don't know if I'm as fast as this guy, on the starting line next to you. So 10 seconds to figure out or think about what is going through your mind in that moment. Matt, you are running into an aid station and you find out that you're currently in second place, and you're just a few seconds behind the leader. So
good enough for me.
Thoughts going through your brain at that point?
That would be amazing.
Chris, the weather suddenly changes mid-race and it starts raining heavily, thunder, lightning. What goes through your mind? All right. Andrew, you sprain your ankle at mile 42 of a 50 miler, and you've got to figure out if you want to keep going or not. All right, Anna, you come through an aid station and if you have been practicing with a certain feeling, they've run out of that. So you have to adjust. What is your thought process there? And then Aaron, let's see, you get through, I'm going to use a relevant example. You get through your third obstacle in an obstacle race, and you see the fourth obstacle coming and you're not sure how you're going to get through it. What do you tell yourself? Okay, so write down exactly what you thought about. You can break it into buckets, even positive, negative, or neutral. But we're going to have a little bit of a discussion about these things. So these immediate reactions that you're thinking of now based on your scenario are examples of like spontaneous or automatic self-talk. So I want to just like highlight how powerful these can be. So if you feel comfortable sharing, I'll go through the lineup again. Just like throw a hand up if you're not comfortable, or, you know, just tell me you're not comfortable sharing. If you don't want to share, that's fine. But I'm just going to go through like the same order that I assigned these to you guys, and we'll just kind of break down how that thought process happened. So Ren, what thoughts went through your head first?
Here we go again. Time for coffee.
Okay, I love that. I would say that's pretty positive. That's, you know, one of those situations where you're accepting it and you're controlling what you can. That's great. Jacob, what about you?
First thought is what is my game plan? Like race plan. Stick to the race plan. When does the race start? So is it like 100K and the race starts at mile 50? Is it a 100 miler and the race starts at mile 80? Like when should I stay in control and then when should I push? Deep breaths, stay calm, stay focused, stay in control. Don't let him control your race.
I love that. Okay. That's like such a good example of instructional self-talk where you're just walking yourself through the steps. Like brilliant. Perfect. Matt, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I echo what Jacob was saying. I think you need to just focus on the plan and run your own race. The positives are that you're in second place. Negatives, obviously, you're going to be thinking about someone else, but you need to just focus on running your race and sticking to your plan.
That's perfect. That's a good combination of like positive and instructional self-talk to get you through that. All right, Chris, you're up.
Yeah, I mean, it starts raining. My initial reaction is like, shit. But I think I wrote down everyone else is dealing with the same thing, so it's no big deal.
Cool. Oh, I love that. Yeah, that's a really great reframe. I think that that's definitely something that like I try to do myself. So yeah, I love that.
Yeah, it's not like there's just a rain cloud over me and no one else, so.
Exactly. Yep. I love that. Everyone's dealing with the same thing. What can I control? It's perfect. Yeah. Andrew, how's your ankle in this situation? What are you thinking?
I would probably just evaluate it in the moment, see like how severe is it? Is this kind of what's the closest aid station? Do I prioritize that? Do I keep moving forward to the next aid station, see how it feels? Do I sit on the side of the trail and wait for someone to come help me? Like I think trying to tap into some like first aid training and kind of figure out how bad of an injury actually is it, and then use that information to figure out a plan. And then try to reflect on race goals, which are usually like acknowledging that you can be enjoying an experience and learning something, even if you're not necessarily crossing the finish line the way you expected.
Yes, I love that. That's again, like a really good combination of the instructional and the positive while also keeping your like health in mind. Just yeah. A+. All right, Anna, what do you got? How's the GI system?
Again, feels a little targeted. Yeah, no, I'm hoping, well, my immediate thought was like, all right, time for plan B. I'm hoping that I practiced with multiple different like nutrition sources or else I'm carrying extra fuel. Like in the back of my mind, like I guess I thought I was trying to suppress was like, oh God, I'm gonna like get nauseous or throw up or something if I eat something that doesn't agree with me. But I'm hoping that at this point that I've like planned for multiple scenarios and can just go through the like BCD plan.
Yes, that's perfect. And I think that's such a really good reframe and like trusting in the training and everything that we do leading up to the race with those like plan B, plan C, plan D, plan just get to the finish line as without getting injured. I think that's great. But also recognizing that negative voice and not letting it become a self-fulfilling prophecy where like, oh, I'm going to start puking. And then you start puking. Like being able to sort of tamper that down and problem solve is brilliant. Aaron, how's it going? He might be on a work call, so I'm not sure if we'll get a response, but we'll keep cruising through here. Aaron, if you want to jump on, just interrupt me whenever you can. Cool. That was such a good exercise. You guys crushed it. That was perfect. Okay. So the next part of self-talk that I want to talk about, that we don't hear as much about is something called cueing. So this refers to like specific words and phrases, could even be like signals or signs that you see on course that you can use to redirect your attention. These can be short, simple, linked to a particular action or mental state. So Yeah, just reminders of what you want to achieve and how. So the point of cueing, 4 points here, enhances focus, it improves technique, helps with stress management and builds consistency. So in enhancing focus, this can be anything from like getting to the next landmark, right? Focusing on running the mile you're in, just whatever you can do to filter out the distractions. Improving your technique, this can be a reminder to like take shorter steps on the downhill or keep your eyes up on the uphill. Stress management, this can help with anxiety and sort of like maintain that composure that you need under pressure by just reminding yourself like of the task at hand. Just get through the next mile, just get to the next aid station, just get to the next gel. Building consistency. This helps you build in and develop routines that will lead to more reliable performances, whether it's in a work situation, in a workout situation, or in a race. So the 3 types of cueing are verbal, visual, and physical. Verbal cueing is positive self, like the positive self-talk that we're talking about, right? So it's like you can tell yourself, well, I guess it could also be instructional, but it's like you tell yourself to relax, you tell yourself to remain calm, you remind yourself that like you can do hard things, like I got this, I've trained for this, I'm ready for this. Visual cueing comes from focusing on a specific object. So this is kind of where landmarks come into play. For me here in Tucson, sometimes it's like, just get to the next cactus or just get, it could be also just get to the next street light, just get to the top of the hill, to help like stay focused on that one thing. And then you readjust the visual cue after that. Physical cues involve bodily sensations. So this might include focusing on like feeling the trail underfoot or making sure that like your cadence is smooth or just kind of like using the triggers in your body. Like when we talk about like listening to your body and like adapting to that, like this, the physical cues can tell you that you're running too fast, that you're running too easy, that you can push harder. So being able to like tap in and listen to what your body's telling you is part of cueing. I also spelled physical wrong. Cool. All right, exercise 2. This is going to be a little bit of a show and tell. So what I'm hoping to do is to have you guys just like take a little bit of time. You can do 30 seconds to a minute and just think about past experiences where you felt especially focused, confident, or resilient. You can jot these down or like any words or phrases that come to mind during these moments. And we'll go through the list again. And this time we're going to start with Andrew. So I'll give you guys 30 seconds and then we'll share. All right, I'm going to put in the chat just 3 quick things that we're going to do with this. So we're going to share the words and we're going to explain why you chose the words. And let's see, I think that's it. Yeah, there were just 3. Okay, so we'll go through this. So Andrew, we'll start with you. We're just going to have you share what your couple words are and explain why you chose them, and then how you'll use them in practice or racing.
Um, I thought of check-in. I guess that's, I don't know, two hyphenated words. Uh, I feel like so much of making sure that like I feel good is I don't do like a specific plan. Like I'm gonna necessarily like eat this every 15 minutes, or I'm like, for me, it's kind of all about responding to how I'm feeling. And so that means taking stock of like how I'm feeling periodically. Typically I use like when my watch beeps telling me, like I've hit a mile, like I'm keeping track of like, okay, how long has it been since I've had something to eat or drink? And so to me, it's kind of uh, there's not that specific plan, but it's kind of like responding to how things have been going and how I'm feeling at that moment in time. And that's why like the concept of checking in seems to make sense for me.
I love that. And you would use that in training and racing for, obvious reasons. That's great.
Yeah.
All right, Anna, you're next on my screen.
Sure. Yeah. So I also have like a combination of words. So mine is like relax into it, which kind of like derives also from like my swimming career, where if you're trying like 100%, you're normally not like smooth, and it's not like an efficient use of effort, I guess. And so being a little bit more relaxed actually allows you to output at a higher level. And so I think about just relaxing when I'm trying to go hard.
That's awesome. Yep. I think that I can see so many scenarios in training and racing where that would be really helpful. All right. Next up is Matt.
Kind of piggybacking on what Anna and Andrew said. I like those words. I kind of do the same thing. I just try to focus. So I guess focus on form, how I'm feeling, what type of run it is, how I should be executing that run. And then just, yeah, constantly checking in every half mile, and just trying to stay consistent.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that. Chris, you're up next.
I missed the prompt. I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries. It's just thinking of a couple of different words that you would choose to like use as self-talk. Like, what's your cue word in a high performance situation, and then why you chose that word and how you'll use it in training or racing.
Okay. Yeah, I'm a bit narcissistic compared to the first three answers. I get a lot of yeah, like don't be a wuss thoughts, stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just how I'm wired. So I think like there is a lot of chill out for sure, like Matthew, Anna, and Andrew said, but at the same time on the opposite end, like I'll be honest, I get a lot of like the don't be a bitch thoughts in my head during races.
Did you name your watch David Goggins? We're
I
gonna
know
work.
a lot of people don't like David Goggins' approach, and I read his book and it was interesting. I know it's not the approach we go for here,
I
but
mean, I think
there's some value, right? If
there's
I'm
definitely value, but if it works for you, it works for you. It's
yeah,
gonna
if I'm suffering bad and it's like I know that it's gonna get better, like sometimes I just have to like call myself out for don't be a wuss, keep moving.
Yep, that works.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, Jacob, you're next.
Mine was you got this. Um, in race, it was just like you got this, like reminding myself to, like keep going forward. And then I've used it in training, especially like on harder efforts, being like, you got this, like you can hold this pace, you can hold this effort, like, it's gonna end. Just keep going till it ends.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's a really good use of cueing and just keeping things positive and like uplifting. That's great. Ren, you are up.
Mine is bravely, calmly, and without fail, which I totally stole from Run with the Wind, and that's how I want to finish.
Bravely, calmly.
Whether that's finish this hill or finish this segment or finish this workout or finish this race.
I love that. Yes. That is awesome. Did anyone hear a keyword from anyone else that resonated with them or gave them like any new ideas besides stay hard?
I normally talk to myself very similarly to the way Chris talks to himself. So there's that.
Yeah, that's totally fine. I think that like acknowledging that is so important because it's not all like rainbows and butterflies, and we will definitely get to the topic of toxic positivity in this discussion. But I think, yeah, like it's not always going to be like, you're great, you can do anything. Because the reality is that like when things get dark, like things get dark. So the point of cueing and self-talk is to sort of like help us either expand the pain cave or get ourselves out of it. So I appreciate your honesty, Ren. And yours, Chris.
Yeah, and real quick, like I had the experience of pacing a friend over the weekend who was in the pain cave for a very, very long time, yelling like, make it stop, make it stop. And like I had the opposite perspective of like being positive. So that was very interesting to when someone else can't find any positivity to try to be that positive voice for them, you know?
Absolutely. And I think that, yeah, finding the balance it's tricky, especially when it's a friend or someone that you like really care about, then you're seeing them
Yeah.
experience something pretty dark.
Yeah.
What are cues and words that you can say that will help them get out of that too? Which is
Yeah.
a good exploration for, like having the conversation with your pacer or crew during longer races, like worst case scenario, this is what I'm going to need to hear. And this is what I'm not going to need to hear. So just really getting to know ourselves in those ways is really important.
Yeah. And I think framing, like, if I can talk to a really good friend like that, why can't I talk to myself like that, you know?
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Was there anything else that that anyone heard that sort of gave them a new idea or resonated strongly?
Well, I liked the Ren, what you said. It sort of reminds me of like the idea of adopting a mantra, which not quite, I think, exactly the keyword, but I will admit that during my 100-miler in February, I definitely was repeating just keep swimming to myself over and over again because it felt appropriate. So it feels like there's a little bit of overlap there.
I love that. And yeah, there was a lot of rain. That's perfect. All right. So, when we talk about queuing, the cool thing about queuing is that, like Andrew, to your point, you can use it as a superpower, and Chris, to yours too. When you're like thinking about how awful something is, like queuing can provide us with like it's a mental skill that can significantly enhance our focus, which therefore enhances our performance and resilience, XYZ. So 6 reasons why this works, how this works is focus. It can help with like calming yourself down in the moment. It can keep you consistent, can like build resilience. You're going to adapt a lot faster. And in most cases, it's like a little bit of a confidence boost. So, what we just talked about with the toxic positivity, so we're going to talk about tragic optimism a little bit because it's the opposite of tragic or of toxic positivity. So what is tragic optimism? It is a concept rooted in existential philosophy and basically refers to our ability to like maintain hope and find meaning despite being really uncomfortable, despite being in a pain cave, suffering. And it's sort of the idea that like even in the face of these hard things, we can choose to remain optimistic. So the difference between this and toxic positivity is that toxic positivity is the belief that we should maintain a positive mindset and suppress all negative emotions in any situation where it would be totally normal to feel sad, angry, frustrated, or scared. So, it's like being relentlessly positive and viewing any negative emotion as a failure. So, I mean, this is kind of like, when people are like, oh, don't be sad, or it could have been worse, or you'll get them next time, but there's not really an opportunity for a next time quite yet. So it basically just dismisses and invalidates like real complex emotions. So I think by like acknowledging and accepting the full range of emotions, including the negative ones, that's going to be like essential for like your overall well-being. So with tragic optimism and self-talk, when tragic optimism is applied to self-talk, it can actually like help you find a better balance or a more realistic dialogue. So the important takeaways with this is like, you're going to be able to acknowledge challenges. So you're going to use self-talk that acknowledges the struggle. Like, this is really tough, but I've trained for this. I can handle this. This is not denying any emotion or difficulty or reality of the situation, but it's going to reinforce your ability to endure the situation and find meaning in the challenge. So another example that's related to this is like finding that growth mindset, right? It's like, what can we do? How are we finding meaning? What are our values? And why does this matter? So again, using these setbacks and failures as opportunity for growth. So self-talk in this case might include phrases like, I can learn from this mistake and I can come back stronger, or this is temporary, like, what I'm going to learn from this, the strength I'm going to get from this is going to help me in XYZ ways down the road. And then maintaining hope. So even in the face of adversity, tragic optimism promotes like a healthier outlook. So I've done hard things before, I can do it again. This is a good example of when we talk about confidence needing evidence. This is like a cueing reminder of that. And then toxic positivity and self-talk. This oversimplifies often unrealistic approaches to positivity. So this can lead to the suppression of valid emotions, can be pretty detrimental overall. So we want to be careful when it comes to combining toxic positivity with self-talk, because like we just said, when shit gets dark, it gets dark, and we have to be careful about how we navigate our way through that. So important takeaways from combining toxic positivity with self-talk is that we're denying real emotion. So we don't want to do that, right? We don't want to dismiss genuine feelings. So saying like, I shouldn't feel tired, I need to stay positive, or just ignore the pain and push through. This could lead to stress, high stress, like not even could, but like will. And could definitely, like, research has shown that this often is one of the like highest leading causes of burnout, of pushing through until you get injured, etc. This is not good. It also creates unnecessary pressure. So it's going to make you feel guilty or inadequate, or like you're not enough if you can't sort of like flip the script on this. So saying things like, I should be so happy about this opportunity, why am I nervous? That's going to put undue pressure on athletes to like feel a certain way, which again diminishes the reality of their emotions. And then it's also superficial encouragement. So saying things like everything's fine, just think positive, without actually addressing the underlying issue could like promote real problems and actually like hinder our ability to perform effectively, because we're essentially like ignoring what our bodies need. So the solution to all of this, as with most things, is to find balance. So self-talk should be 3 things. Like, I don't know. I think if you take anything away from this, it's like that self-talk should be these 3 things. It should be authentic, it should be constructive, and it should be empowering. So incorporating tragic optimism into self-talk is going to allow you to like embrace the full spectrum of your emotions while still finding joy and meaning in like the journey and in the process. So this is going to contrast with toxic positivity, which leads to superficial, ineffective self-talk. So for this final exercise, we're going to find that balance. So with Chris and Ren and Matt, like all your guys' discussions of like suck it up, like just push through. That's cool. I love that those were brought up because that's like the reality of the situation, right? So with this exercise, I want you guys to take a few minutes to think of like a really hard moment, or it could be like a tough workout, a bad race, any moment of self-doubt that you've encountered with running, and write down the self-talk that occurred during that moment. So I want to know like exactly what you thought or said to yourselves, whether it's positive or negative. And then we'll share if you're comfortable. So take a couple minutes and then we'll go through this athlete by athlete again. Okay, Andrew, you're first up on my screen again. Sorry, it jumbles you guys. But we'll start with you if you're comfortable sharing. And basically the questions I'm going to ask you about what you share are like, there's going to be an authenticity check, like a constructive check, and an empowerment check. So I want to know, like, did it reflect your true feelings in the moment? Did you feel like you had to say those things to yourself to get through it? So we'll start with the authenticity check and then kind of just go through it as you explain.
Cool. My mind immediately went to a run a few years back where I slipped and fell in the backcountry and broke a couple of fingers and tore a tendon in my hand. And I was like 7 miles from the trailhead, had no cell service. It was like low 40s and raining, and I didn't even have an extra, like a rain layer. And I definitely used a lot of self-talk to kind of like get me out of that situation and back to the trailhead. Um, I think early, like right after it happened, it was kind of just like, all right, no big puncture wounds, nothing that like prevented me from running or moving again. Got back going, realized that my hand does not feel right. And then it was kind of just like, all right, can't worry about what this actually is going to mean long term. But like I just needed to focus on like getting to the trailhead because I didn't have any other option really. And so then that was like, all right, what do I need to do to just manage the situation, which meant taking my like wind layer and wrapping that around my hand. And then I didn't really like I wasn't always running, but I made sure not to stop. And so it was just very focused on like keep moving to the trailhead, and then not worrying about anything else that I needed to do, like, figure out a doctor's appointment and all of that stuff, because like it just didn't help at that point in time. So it was all about yeah, just kind of like focus on getting out and not dwelling on any of the things that weren't beneficial at that point in time.
Yeah, I think like check, check, check across those boxes, like very authentic to that situation. Also super constructive, like using that instructional self-talk, just like do what you need to do to get out. And then like the empowerment adjustment like box is also checked because it's like you're doing what you need to do to get out and like you're empowering yourself to get there. So yes, that's awesome. Jacob, you are next on my screen.
All right. So I wrote down two examples. I wrote down Black Canyons as being like on the negative side, and then I wrote down like the self-talk through Leadville as being like what implementing this stuff looked like. So Black Canyons, I was way off like my A and B goals. And the self-talk was a lot of like, maybe I'm not a good runner. I'm probably being over optimistic. You know, why are these goals so unachievable and unreachable for me? And just feeling kind of like I failed. And then like during Leadville, I didn't hit my A goal, I didn't hit my B goal, but like I hit my ultimate goal of finishing. Um, and one of them, like I just acknowledged the feelings of like, it's kind of a bummer. Would have been cool to like get the big belt buckle. I voiced it to my pacer just to like get it out, but I didn't let it overtake me. I think like, you know, I kept telling myself like it's your first 100, right? Like it's your first 100. Half of these people dropped anyway. Like just finish. Like that's really what matters, more than like some arbitrary goal.
Yeah, I think those are both really good examples. And like in the first example, at Black Canyon, like I think no matter what, like everyone's first authenticity box like is gonna be checked because those are your real thoughts and your real emotions. But when it comes to like the constructive or instructional self-talk and then like the empowerment, like one thing, Jacob, that I think that you do really well is you're able to break down races in chunks. So when you were talking about coming up and over Hope Pass, it's like the race doesn't start at Twin Lakes, the race doesn't start at Hope Pass, like the race finishes in Leadville. Like I just have to get to Leadville. And I think that that was like, that's such a poignant note in this case because you weren't focused on anything that had gone wrong before, even though like you had to adjust fueling a little bit, the flask issue that happened where you just got water and not liquid calories, like you were able to adjust really well with instructional self-talk. So I think that like being constructive with yourself and also like there's a feeling of empowerment there too, because it was like, I know I can just get to the next spot. And you're just like consistently like watching yourself do these really hard things, like across a really difficult race, despite not everything going to plan. So I think you did a really good job with that. And those are great examples.
Thank you.
All right, Matt, you're up next.
Hey, so yeah, my last experience was everything was going really well in my last marathon. I was on track to hit my A goal actually, but then late in the race I had really bad cramps. So immediately yeah, I had a lot of negative self-talk like right away. But then I quickly kind of just shifted away from that and just focused on like just do not DNF, just do not DNF. So the goal shifted away from a goal to just like get to the finish line. And yeah, I just kept on repeating that, just like just finish. All you have to do is finish. And then you can process, what went wrong later on.
Yeah, I think that's super constructive. I love that you were like, just finish the task at hand. We can process and understand it later, but just getting to that finish line is like having that sort of self-talk is not even like so much like David Goggins-esque. It's just like the reality of the situation. Like, I want to finish this race. I know I can finish this race. And once I figure out what went wrong, I can do the next one better. Like, that is very cool.
Got to carry the boats. Yep. Just
Yep.
got to carry them.
Ren's laughing. All right, Ren, you're up.
The probably the worst race I've ever had was trying to run Big Sur with strep. Didn't know it was strep. Didn't know I was sick until like 3 miles in. I thought, oh, something's really gone wrong here. And it was an out and back course this year because the road tried to fall into the ocean. So I knew I wasn't going to die, and I didn't want to wait until the road was closed to pick up the sag wagon 6 hours later and go back. So the only way out is through. And the way I kept goading myself is I've got an old injury, and some people have told me you shouldn't be able to do this. And that really pisses me off. So that's how I kept getting myself up hills. People think you shouldn't be able to do this. Oh, yeah, well, F you, I'm going.
I love that. I love that. I think that the self-talk that you had to, even knowing that something was wrong, like you had that, like that fire lit under you to like prove people wrong about the injury, but also like, you know yourself well enough. Like you guys know yourself better than I will ever know your bodies or physiology or anything like that. So being able to like understand like, yeah, this doesn't feel great right now. I might be really sick. And also like, I can finish this. I've trained for this. I'm here. And despite the road falling in and the course reroute and like all of these things, like even a couple of weeks before that race, we didn't know if they were going to have that race, even though like the logistics were planned, the flights were booked, like we were able to adjust and adapt as needed. And I think that like that in itself is really cool because you were there to make it happen. And then, you know, the empowering part of that is that you were there for you, not necessarily to like prove these people wrong, but I think to like prove yourself right and to prove yourself capable of continuing to do hard things despite the injury that you sustained. Very cool. Anna, you're next.
So this is like more of just a general scenario that I've run into a lot. So I like have pre-race anxiety, especially when I was swimming and doing really short events. And my coaches would always tell me to reframe anxiety as excitement and like say your body doesn't know the difference between anxiety and excitement. And that worked for me like to a certain extent, but I'm like, I think I know that I'm anxious and I feel anxious about this. And something that's worked for me more recently is like reframing that anxiety as an opportunity to be brave. And like acknowledging that I actually am anxious, but like thinking about the positives and like I can face this and like this is a good opportunity for a challenge.
Yes, I love that. That's such a cool reframe. I think like anxiety is the opportunity to be brave. Like I'm going to write that down on something because that's so dang cool. Like that's something that I think we can all use, but like what an empowering, like almost mantra to like get through stuff like that. Cause like arousal states and performance states are all like very like can be very complicated, but like when you can name it, it's easier to deal with. Like it's easier to navigate your way through. So that's very cool. I appreciate you sharing that. I appreciate like all of you sharing everything because I know that it's, you know, it's cool to be able to like share this stuff and work through it. So I think with all of that, like I want to ask you guys like based off of this conversation, just to, and you don't have to share, you can if you want, but just to sort of like reflect on how you can apply these things to real life, to training, to racing. And then like encourage you to write down your keywords, your mantras in places where you'll see it regularly. And even like one thing like Anna, like you just said, like anxiety is an opportunity to be brave, like very cool. Definitely something I'm going to write down and look at a lot. But just having it somewhere you can see it on a mirror, on the door frame, on your shoe rack, like wherever and whatever makes most sense to you. Just having these reminders that you can do hard things and then practicing the self-talk to follow up. You know, confidence needs evidence. We're putting in the miles every day. We should also be putting in the time to like talk to ourselves the way we would a friend, talk to ourselves the way we would a family member, and just helping ourselves in the process, which I think is super cool. So, yeah. So if you guys have any other questions, like happy to go through them all now, and just see what final thoughts are, what your feelings are around self-talk. I think a lot of times it can be portrayed as this like hippity dippity woo woo, like, self-talk. But I think sometimes, like, I recently heard someone say like woo is true. And like, I loved that because I love self-talk. So, yeah, I'll open up to you guys if you have any questions or want to chat through anything else.
If anyone listens to the single track podcast, they talked about self-talk recently, which I thought was really interesting. They talked about Adam Peterman, I think during a world championship race, like witnessing some of his self-talk. And then they also talked about a baseball player, Ricky Henderson. And one of the apocryphal stories is that after he struck out, the next batter up heard him saying to himself as he walked back, "Don't worry, Ricky, you're still the best." Which I just like, I love that energy. So anyway, I thought those were like both of the stories from that podcast were interesting because it was like actual verbal out loud self-talk. And that I think is something that I'm planning to experiment with because I think that might be helpful for some situations.
Yeah.
I listened to that. I listened to that podcast, and during Leadville, that's why I was like talking to myself out loud, because they were talking about, if you've seen Receiver on Netflix, like George Kittle does the same thing, and they were talking about the top sports athletes. They all do this, and none of them know that everyone else is doing it. It's just like a natural thing for like the top performers. And I found it really hard, like saying it out loud made it a lot more real than if I was just saying it in my head.
I love that. I think that like we got to see that at the Olympics this year, especially with the women's gymnastics team, where you'd see Simone Biles like mouthing words to herself. And there were times where she was also mic'd up saying like, "You got this, like I can do this," and talking to yourself in the third and first person, like whatever is most comfortable for you. But it's so cool that we're seeing it more and more in these elite athletes, where it's like, these are high stakes performances, like a gold medal opportunity, but like being able to use it during Leadville, being able to use it during Orcas when you're like getting rained on for 30 hours straight, is just like, it's so powerful and it's so cool because it does make a huge difference, and I think that the stories we tell ourselves, especially about ourselves, matters so much, because if we don't believe in ourselves, how are we supposed to expect anyone else to believe in us? Like it starts with ourselves, and like it starts with self-talk. So just like such a cool little like superpower that we can use in every facet of life. It just also comes in real handy when we're running. So yeah. But cool. This was a great discussion. Thank you guys so much for sharing and participating. I'll get this uploaded into the newsletter, and we'll keep moving forward. But I'm just really grateful that you guys are so open and excited about this stuff, because I am too. Cool. I hope you guys have a really great weekend, and a good rest of the Friday. Hope it's not too stressful.
You too.
See everyone.
Cool. Bye guys. Thank you.
Bye-bye. See ya.